I'm going to platinum a game from the legendary Marvel Ultimate Alliance series, specifically the second game. It is also no longer available to buy on the PlayStation Store. The Ultimate Alliance series is adored by fans, even after the third entry in the series released only on the Switch. But the first two games in the series are still on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 too if you bought it digitally before 2017. And we found number 2 in one of our game libraries. I am on the hunt for a whopping 59 trophies, platinum included, and they consist of a playthrough right away on the hardest possible difficulty. Gulp. Then once I've completed the game and grabbed as many collectibles as possible, I'll have to dive straight back into the story in New Game Plus on the newly unlocked Legendary difficulty. There are two paths to take during the story, pro-registration and anti-registration, in regard to superheroes being forced to register themselves with S.H.I.E.L.D. and a civil war breaking out because of it. Both of these pathways give you multiple trophy opportunities. There are a few tedious grinds in the game. One is to perform fusion attack combos with every single character for a grand total of 272 combinations. Another is to defeat multiple bosses on the hardest difficulties without reviving a single member of my team should they fall in battle. But the worst grind of all is for collecting 200 boosts. You can equip up to 3 boosts and they will give you various helpful effects. There are a limited amount of boosts in the game, so I will have to grind whilst trying not to miss any of them. Thank you everyone for your continued support, and a huge shout out as always to the NC Collective. And now without further ado, let's get into the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 trophy hunt. Right away, we're starting the game on the Super Heroic difficulty, and the first mission drops us in Doomstad with a selection of the most popular heroes. Naturally, we get an awesome cinematic intro featuring our heroes infiltrating the enemy base. It reminds me of something from a sitcom.
No one told you life was gonna be this way.
The action begins, and this first level acts as a tutorial, so I can't change any members of my team just yet. And I start off with Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, and Wolverine. I claw, shoot, web, and punch my way through hordes of enemy soldiers and robots looking for intel left by Black Widow. Then I'm introduced to the notorious fusion mechanic. If I perform all of the fusions the game asks me to perform with these 4 characters during this first mission, I will be rewarded with a trophy. You can upgrade every hero's abilities and stats, unlocking more abilities later on once you pick a side in the Civil War. It might not be as efficient, but to save time I just used the lovely auto-spend mechanic, so I didn't have to manually sort it out for every single character. Nearing the end of the first part of this mission, I picked up my first trophy of the journey, for destroying this specific statue of Dr. Doom. Whilst playing, I was completely oblivious to what this trophy and reference was for. I only realised how I earned it once I was editing the video. Topple a dictator. Okay, I still don't really know what that's for. I reached the end of this level and we had Electro waiting for us, a classic villain to get you pumped for the huge mashup of heroes and villains this game has to offer. We pulled the plug on Electro and could continue upwards onto the castle walls, where I picked up the trophy I mentioned earlier for performing all of the recommended fusions during this tutorial part of the game. We now had Cable in the team instead of Iron Man, and I reached the final boss in the opening part of the game. It was the Tinkerer in control of a giant machine. These end of area bosses are the big ones that count towards the trophy for no revivals. Once he was defeated, we blew the place to smithereens and could go to the hub for the first time. A trophy also came with this victory. We were now in Stark Tower. This is where you can hang out with other heroes, replay missions, partake in simulation challenges, or do a bit of trivia. Don't forget to grab those collectibles too. It's not the most enjoyable thing, but the trivia was needed for a few trophies. So I decided to stop by and answer 15 questions correctly for the Trivia Buff trophy. Then I plugged a second controller in to earn Trivia Team Up. That's for 30 correct answers in co-op. Next, I swung by the simulator to complete the training sim. This simulation is great for farming challenges later on. You can keep spawning in enemies to beat up to your heart's content. With another controller, I could earn an easy trophy for completing a sim mission in co-op. I switched off the other controller and carried on with the story on a mission to rescue Captain Marvel. And to my surprise, I received another easy trophy, just at the wrong time. Oh, Rookie Squad. What?
Huh?
Complete a map in co-op. Oh, okay. I've not even put the other controller on. Then another trophy popped just for smashing crates. There are various sets of combat challenges in the game, all with their own trophies. You need to do things like performing combos and throws, or very niche things like taking out multiple enemies with one thrown object. I picked up one of the easier combat trophies here after throwing enemies. No! We progressed through the level chasing one of my favourite Spidey villains, Shocker. Then we were stopped by Grim Reaper for a mid-level boss fight. I smashed him to pieces with the thing and carried on towards the end of level boss, Lucia von Bardas. We fight her on a barge while she fires cannons at the people in the city. I was mixing up my teams now, trying to complete some of the challenges and perform fusions, so I had to do less later. I ended up beating her and the other villains with Gambit and earned my trophy for protecting the city. Our next mission took place in Washington DC, and I was giving Magneto a whirl. We pressed on and met up with the Merc with a Mouth himself, Deadpool, and recruited him, so he was now a playable character, and we moved on to take on Titanium Man, one of the harder bosses in the game that could prove a problem on legendary difficulty, because he can go invisible and has lots of enemies helping him. I defeated him without reviving to make progress towards that trophy, and then went back to HQ where I was awarded another story trophy. The time had now come for the heroes to register with S.H.I.E.L.D., and this causes havoc between everyone. There are arguments breaking out in the middle of our HQ. I had to talk to both parties and decide for myself who I would join. This was also a good opportunity for a trophy that requires you to have special conversations between characters, for example talking to Mr. Fantastic with the other members of the Fantastic Four. Eventually I could take the elevator downstairs, and for this playthrough I was going to be pro registration and join Maria Hill and Iron Man. You get an easy trophy just for choosing a side. Then I had a few more special conversations to tick that trophy off the list. Another way to earn precious boosts is to choose different dialogue options multiple times. I was aggressive towards Captain America here, and I think I upset him because he set Goliath on us, my most hated boss fight of the game. I found this fight so frustrating, and I couldn't use any revives because of the trophy I needed. My heroes were dropping like flies. And I kept dying. Man, this boss fight is bull. But eventually I sussed it out. I had to use a specific fusion type called a targeted fusion that only certain heroes can perform, and this made the fight a piece of cake. After taking down Goliath at last, we headed back to HQ for another trophy, this time one that was specific to the pro registration pathway. In the next mission we were tracking down Captain America and his team, and we were seemingly in agreement to join forces, but the Cap deceived Iron Man and the fighting ensued all over again. We had to chase Captain America through the level and were stopped constantly by other heroes. After a fight against Colossus and Dagger, I picked up my 50th boost. Still 150 more to go though. Next was a fight against Captain America and Luke Cage. This is a multi-phase fight and we knocked them about and sent them packing. But the whole place started to explode due to the fighting and a misplaced adamantium shield. Then all the villains that were meant to be helping us were suddenly controlled by nanites and turned against us, attempting to blow everything up with explosives. Nick Fury reappears out of nowhere and I pick up a story trophy during the chaos. Then I had to face off against Green Goblin and Venom whilst disposing of bombs down a hole before they explode in my face. An interesting boss fight for sure. Once the dust settles, we wake up in Nick Fury's secret base for another trophy, and then start completing missions undercover. During my next outing, I picked up another trophy for completing combat challenges. The task that was left was to use a pulling power to defeat enemies. It makes sense now, and I was like, what's a pulling power? Spidey's one. Bam! During the next mission I had to face off against loads of villains I'd previously faced, and this level was full of traps and turrets, another mission that could prove a problem on Legendary. I defeated bosses such as Whirlwind and Moonstone and added more progress towards the trophy for not using revives. Once this part of the mission was completed, we reached a stalemate with S.H.I.E.L.D. and ended up bringing everyone back together again, uniting once more in the name of Nick Fury, whom had passed away. And after all of this, I earned the Alliance Reborn trophy. For the final act in the story, we jetted off to Wakanda and fought alongside King T'Challa's people. All of the enemies we face now were being controlled by nanites. There was a boost to unlock that allows you to do more damage to these specific enemies too, which was really overpowered later on. We destroyed multiple artillery cannons to stop the bombardment of Wakanda, and then I came across the last side objective I needed for a trophy. There are only a few side objectives in the game, and they usually consist of destroying objects in a few different missions. Some can be quite hidden too. This time it was for destroying all of these pods that these enemy types spawn from. We finally reached the Black Panther himself and had another boss fight with Venom and Green Goblin, but this time all of our allies had been turned against us. This was a cool fight though, and afterwards it meant we would unlock the final HQ. Once I had beaten the villains to a pulp, I earned multiple trophies, one for collecting dossiers, a second for story progression, and once I could free roam around this HQ, I picked up the last piece of concept art I needed for that trophy as well. Now I was on the final stretch to completing my first playthrough. Definitely the hardest part because I had to face loads of strong enemies that use different elemental attacks. This was the most memorable area in the game for me though, it was lots of fun. Hiding away in this place was the last audio log I needed to pop that trophy too. I progressed into the next area, and although it's all technically the same level, each area acts as a map, so I suddenly popped one of the trophies to do with not reviving any of my heroes on the hard difficulties.
Hey, Immortal Heroics, gold. Completely forgot about that one, that's one of the hard ones out of the way.
I bumped into the Tinkerer again and he was still up to no good, but this time he didn't have a mech to protect himself. Whilst fighting him and all of his cronies, I earned a trophy for hitting multiple high scores with all 3 different types of fusion attack throughout my playthrough: targeted, clearing, and guided. Now for the final fight. I had to survive an elevator of death and take down enemies that stopped the elevator from ascending. Eventually I reached the top and was swarmed by hordes of the toughest enemies. During this first playthrough they save you a nice surprise, so they let the trophies for completing the game pop first. How lovely. I earned 1 trophy for completing the game, and another for completing it on Iron Man's side of the Civil War. The surprise that's waiting smashes his way up here and attempts to destroy us. It's a nanite-controlled Nick Fury. He wasn't dead after all. Nick Fury always surprises us. This fight is fairly tough when you're not using revives, but I managed to figure it out fairly quickly because he only changes tactics when you lower his health. He switches between powers derived from villains or nanite-affected heroes from earlier in the game, such as Electro and Havoc. Fury takes a while to go down, he's a bit of a damage sponge, but eventually I was victorious and earned a really powerful boost from him that adds +4 to all my stats. Very useful for Legendary. I also unlocked Nanite Nick Fury as a bonus playable character, so I will need to use his fusion attacks with everyone as well. Nick Fury is okay, and Iron Man and the Cap are buddies again. Playthrough 1 complete, and then it's straight onto Legendary mode. I get to keep all of my progress, so I was way stronger than when I started the previous playthrough, and I smashed through Act 1 on Legendary so fast that I almost forgot to record the trophy. So I learned a couple of things during this playthrough, the first being that I needed to answer all of the trivia questions again with a second controller, so I literally wasted an hour or so of time there. Oops. And also, that Thor is extremely overpowered. I had to collect Asgardian runes to unlock him. I made some good progress towards the final combat challenge too. I had to hit 5 enemies with 1 thrown object. This was really janky, so I was grateful that Thor had good aim with cars. The most annoying challenge that I'll have to do is for destroying robots with their own grenades, but I'll get to that later. For now, I was progressing with Legendary difficulty, and this time choosing the anti-registration path like a true rebel. The 2 pathways are actually quite different. Some bosses are reskinned, but others are completely unique. And there's even a different HQ, with new trivia questions. Instead of Cable, I had to defeat Bishop here and earn myself a trophy for doing so. I had missed a fair amount of collectibles, but thankfully they aren't all needed. But here I came across the final Gamma Regulator needed for, you guessed it, unlocking the Incredible Hulk, the final character I needed to start grinding out those fusion combos. I mentioned reskinned bosses, and this was one of them, Yellow Jacket this time instead of Goliath. All of the suffering against Goliath meant that Yellow Jacket was a breeze now that I knew what to do. And after I'd knocked this giant over, I earned my next story-related trophy for the anti-reg playthrough. I was now near the end of Act 2 again, and this time I fought Iron Man instead of Captain America. He was honestly a lot easier to beat because Captain America could only be damaged when he threw his shield, which was a pain in the arse. Tony Stark was easy pickings. We have the same outcome and the place explodes, and then it's a meeting with Nick Fury again. I grabbed the story trophy here, and also a huge milestone for 125 boosts, 75 to go. After the first Venom and Green Goblin fight when Nick Fury takes us back to his secret base, that is where Act 2 ends, so I received my trophy for completing it on Legendary. Later on during a huge boss fight I finished off an important trophy, which meant the game was about to get a whole lot easier. This was fantastic.
Oh, undefeated heroes. Yeah, what is that for though? Oh, 12 mission bosses on super heroic or legendary difficulty without revival or map reload. Nice. Finally got that, and now I could just revive willy-nilly whenever I want. Yes. I smashed through everyone with the overpowered god that is Thor and defeated Nick Fury again. It's no longer a surprise, so my trophies pop afterwards this time.
one for completing Act 3 on Legendary, and another for siding with Captain America. Now it was time to clean up the rest of the trophies, starting off with a new game on an easier difficulty. Then I made my way to the simulator for some trophies, starting off with finishing the last pesky combat challenge. I had to destroy these robots with their own grenades. Yeah! Boom! Yes! Every trick in the book, that's the combat mastery. Yes! Complete all combat mastery goals listed on the stats page. There are loads of challenges to complete in the simulator, and I needed to earn myself at least 12 gold medals to grab a few trophies. The levels consist of all sorts of things, even hunting for rubber ducks in crates. I'll give you a hint, use Storm for this one. I didn't get gold the first time, but I earned the trophy for bronze medals. I was simply going down the list playing them all until I got gold. I earned the trophy for silver medals not long after. The levels at the bottom of the list were more challenging, and a few of them had trophies attached to them. This boss gauntlet style level had 3 trophies attached to it. I earned the first one for taking down 2 enemies within 10 seconds of each other. The next trophy in this level was for not smashing any of the health crates by the time you reach the final stage. I missed this one the first time around because Wolverine let me down, but on my second try I earned the last trophy from this level for completing it without anyone on your team being defeated. The next sim mission I played was quite an interesting one. I had to escort a robot through the level whilst keeping it healthy and defeating any enemies that attacked it. The trophies in this level were for not disabling any traps or destroying any turrets, so I just sat back as Iron Fist and used his healing ability. This ability heals everyone on your team. It was so useful throughout this entire platinum journey, and he's the only character that can do it. Eventually, after 10 minutes of babysitting, I picked up both of these trophies, and our new robot friend was very happy about it. The next mission was simply for protecting 4 soldiers that were in my team. This was absolutely no problem for Thor and Iron Fist. It became a bit like a dungeon crawling game. Thor was the tank and Iron Fist the healer. Easy. I managed to grab my gold medal for this level, and that popped the trophy for me. One of the more difficult simulator missions was a battle against Magneto. I actually only managed to grab a silver medal here, but that's not what I needed. I was doing this level to defeat Magneto as an entire team of X-Men to earn a miscellaneous trophy. I had been putting it off for a while, but it was time to go back to the trivia and answer all of the questions again in co-op. I had to also progress through the story for a third time to reach the Pro Reg HQ again in Act 2, so I'd wasted quite a few hours on this trivia malarkey, but I finally earned this annoying trophy. I then had to complete loads of maps in co-op for a few more trophies. Luckily I could actually just replay any headquarters area in the simulator, then go to the mission select area, which then ended the level, and that would count as a completed map. So these trophies took minutes instead of hours. Phew. Another co-op trophy next, simply for performing 10 fusions with a co-op partner. This was easily done in the training simulator where you can infinitely use fusions. Next I spent quite a while performing all of the fusion combos between every single character. This was quite draining, but you can track everything on the statistics screen, so it went by quicker than I expected for a lovely gold trophy. During a combat sim, I was farming the individual hero challenges. Some of these challenges can earn you alternate outfits. Most of the challenges for outfits are just for defeating 50 enemies after choosing a side in the Civil War. It's the challenges for boosts that are annoying. But anyway, after a bit of a grind, I had earned all of the base game costumes needed for the trophy. I went for an easy one next for reviving my teammates, but because I'd previously been going for the trophies where you can't revive, I still didn't have this trophy. So I went into a sim mission where I could easily kill off my teammates to revive them. Sorry, not sorry. Then I went for the really horrible grind, the 200 boosts. I'd gathered as many as possible from the story now, and all that was left were the few boosts remaining that were rewards for completing all of the hero challenges. This took a really long time. I had to take a day off and come back to it because it was so daunting and made me miserable. Nothing a bit of sleep can't cure though. I went back to it and used various simulation missions to finally grind out the last boosts I needed. In terms of actual difficulty, I now had the hardest trophies left. 2 trophies included in a simulation mission. This was the only mission designed for co-op, so I'd absolutely recommend finding a buddy. It is doable solo, but I received help from Lewis and we smashed it. You need to complete this mission and defeat 75 enemies, which is harder than it sounds because the robots try to run past you into the laser fields. But the hardest one of all, and the one that I feel really requires co-op, is for throwing all of the mines in the level. If a single one blows up, you need to restart. And all of this happens while the laser fields force you to constantly move through the level. and the AI can blow the minds up too. But like I said, with a co-op partner and one of you on each side, it's pretty easy. It's a challenge by yourself. We eventually got the trophy, and that also meant I was going to get the platinum. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this journey, and thank you to the NC Collective. You can support us via YouTube or Patreon if you're interested. Have a good one.